Peace, Israel, and Yah bless. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law is the truth. Now, this is part four of List Them Mine Enemies. Now, before I started part three, I forgot to actually present some reading material that can kind of substantiate some of this information. One would be this book, Amazing Facts and Revelations, by Professor Aliazi. All right, this pretty much speaks to the Hebrew exiles from Israel. Now, you have to read this with some form of discernment because there's some things in here that he's saying, and he's saying them without saying them. Now, this is a brother that wrote this book, so you see this is an Israelite, the one of us that wrote this. And if you read this, use some discernment with it. That way you understand clearly what he's trying to say when he's not saying it. Because our enemies own these publishing companies and the printing press. So he has to be very cautious with what he's saying. And if you can read between the lines and put it together, you understand exactly where he's coming from with this. All right. Next, Arthur Koestler, the 13th tribe. Now, when you read this one, make sure you read this with discernment. You have to have all types of ability to kind of sift through what they're trying to say. Good information validates many of what you're hearing and seeing within the scrolls. But once again, read it with discernment. And then there's this, the secret relationship between blacks and Jews. Correct term, Israelites and Jews. This is published by the Nation of Islam, apparently. It's one of their books. This is volume 2. But it's much information in here that validates exactly who those people are. And it's actually their own people that's actually bringing forth this information. Once again, the people that have lied to us, we do not have to go digging under the earth to find this information. The ones that have lied to us are going to be the ones that are going to tell us the truth. So these are books that you can actually get and read. One that I do not have with me is from Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph Windsor. I loaned that one out years ago and have not seen it yet. So sometimes when you lend an Israelite your books, they don't return them. But those are 3 books that actually validate some of this material pertaining to these people who are calling themselves Jews and fooling the people of the earth, telling them that they're the people of God. Anyhow, brace yourselves, tighten up your jaws, do not turn to the left or to the right, or you will get hit in the mouth. We are to walk the straight and narrow way of the Most High's commandments. And once again, this lesson is entitled List Them Mine Enemies, Part 4. We will start off at where we left off, pertaining to one stick, the house of Israel, the north and the south were to be reunited as one nation, one stick in the hands of the Most High. Now, let's begin this chapter, this lesson at Ezekiel chapter 37, the valley of the dry bones, because the Most High has to awaken the house of Israel, because we will be asleep, we will be in the dust as dead men walking around these nations. And so he has to wake us up, put new spirit upon us. That way we may stand up and take our place after walking around these nations dead, deaf, blind, absolutely stupid. That is the curse that was placed upon the house of Israel. If you let the Israelis tell it, they are the smartest people on the earth. They have the best scientists, the best doctors, score high on all the tests. They're the most brilliant people on the earth, according to them, and according to everybody else. The prophecy states that the Most High would remove the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding from the children of Israel. We will be in the nations deaf, and we will be blind. We will be as dead men in these nations. In other words, we're going to be dummies in these nations. That's the prophecy of the true house of Israel. All right, let's start with once again, Ezekiel chapter 37. And we will start at verse 16. Ezekiel chapter 37 and verse 16 reads, Moreover, thou son of man, take thee one stick, and write upon it for Judah, and for the children of Israel his companions. Then take another stick, and write upon it for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel his companions. Notice he's speaking to two nations, the north and the south, that are split. Verse 17, and join them one to another into one stick, and they shall become one in mine hand. Verse 18, and when the children of thy people shall speak unto thee, saying, wilt thou not show us what thou meanest by these? Verse 19 reads, say unto them, thus saith Yah, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, that's Ephraim, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, which is all in the north, his fellows, and will put them with even and put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and there shall be one in mine hand. Now, what we've just read, and I will reread that, is the Most High speaking that he will take the house of Israel in the north and Judah down in the south, who have been two separate nations, and he's going to make them one. And we're going to return back onto one law, and we will be one people speaking one language, calling upon him in one consent. Let me reread verse 19. Say unto them, thus saith Yah, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. So, remember, Ephraim is a son of Joseph, and Ephraim is what's known as the northern kingdom. So the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom will be one in the hand of the Most High. That is a reunification of the entire 12 tribes. Verse 13, verse 20, and the sticks whereupon thou writest shall be in thine hand before their eyes. Verse 21, and say unto them, thus saith Yah, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side, and bring them into their own land. All right. So the children of Israel were scattered into many lands, and the Most High said that he would gather us from the midst of the heathen and bring us back into our own land. Verse 22, and I will make them one nation in the land upon the mountains of Israel, and one king shall be king to them all. And they shall be no more two nations, neither shall they be divided into two kingdoms anymore. So, once the house of Israel has been gathered out of these many lands, and we are placed back into the land that was promised unto our forefathers, we will no longer be Ephraim and Judah, or Israel and Judah. We'll be one Israel, all the whole 12 tribes, the whole entire family, reunited as one once again in the land. And one king shall be king over us all. You already know it's not a king. The king of Israel and the king of the whole earth is the Most High himself. What we will have is what's known as a governor, also referred to as a captain over the people. And that will be a seed of David. David is dead and gone. He will not return ever. David has sons upon the earth. A man of David's seed, one of his sons, will sit upon that throne when we are returned into the land. And there will be no Knesset or no democracy of any kind. It will be the rule of law, will be these laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts that we were given at the first. Verse 23, neither shall they defile themselves any more with their idols, nor with their detestable things, nor with any of their transgressions. But I will save them out of their dwelling places, wherein they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So shall they be my people, and I be their strength, or their strong one. That's verse 23. So the Most High is saying, when he's doing all of this, and he gathers the house of Israel, returns us back into that land, we are now one stick. We're no longer two separate nations. He is saying that all of these detestable things and these idols, He's going to save us. He's saying that they're going that we have sinned in these many lands, all right, and that no longer will we be doing these detestable things, i.e., there will be no strip clubs, there will be no bribery, there will be no homosexuality, and all the manner of foul things that we see in the land currently. These things will not exist. You understand? So we shall not be defiled anymore in the midst, as we have been in the midst of the nations when he returns us and we're under one umbrella. We are reunited as a nation. All the things that we have done will not be. We will be his people. He will be our strength, and he will forgive us from all of these sins that we have committed in these many lands. Verse 24, and David my servant, this is a son of David, shall be king, which is governor, over them. And they shall have one shepherd, that will be him, the seed of David. They shall also walk in my judgments and observe my statutes and do them. So, you know the Israelis are not the house of Israel. Why? Because when we return back onto this land, we will be one nation. And the rule of law is not going to be Knesset. It's going to be these laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. We just read that. Verse 25. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given unto Jacob my servant, wherein your fathers have dwelt, and they shall dwell therein, even they and their children and their children's children forever. And my servant David shall be their prince forever. Now, his servant David being the prince, notice the term used is prince. That's the correct term. Prince, captain of the people, governor, same thing. So a son of David will always sit upon that throne. That is a covenant that the Most High made with David. He told David that a man of your seed will always sit upon this throne forever, provided this nation is established on this land. So you thinking JC coming back? Well, let's look at all of this with common sense. JC had a miraculous birth according to the story. Seed means sperm. No one impregnated Mary. No man of David's lineage impregnated Mary. So therefore, no way JC is the seed of David. Impossible. You can't find nowhere on this earth where a woman has ever been impregnated and there was no man in sight. It's never happened. This is a fable. Now, the seed of David is a son of David. Simple as that. And one of his sons will be upon that throne. And he will be him, and then his son after that, and then his son after him, and his son after him, just like it has been in the days of old. You are governor, then one of your sons will be governor, and one of his sons will be governor, and one of his sons will be governor, etc. It's all still David. It's his seed. All right. Verse 26. Moreover, I will make a covenant of peace with them. It shall be an everlasting covenant with them, and I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. So the Most High is saying, once we return back onto this land, after he has gathered us out of these many nations, he will return us back onto the land that he promised unto our forefathers. And he's going to make a covenant of peace with us. The Israelis know not peace. They are fearful every day. They are out here begging for money from the United States government. They're out here trying to make peace and make allegiances with these Arab nations who want them out of that land. So there's no peace there. The Most High said he will multiply the house of Israel there. They're not multiplying in that land. What's happening is they're being brought in from other parts of Europe and put in that land. Most High said he will set his sanctuary in the midst of them forever. What is his sanctuary? His sanctuary is that third temple. These Israelis cannot build that third temple. They're not of the house of Israel. There are absolutely no Levites among them. They cannot lay one brick. They cannot lay one brick to start that third temple. Can't do it. They're not the house of Israel. They're not the seed of Jacob. Therefore, they've been there for 70 years, and that building of that third temple, where the Most High would establish his tabernacle, has not been done, cannot be done, not with them sitting in that land. So the Most High states clearly he was going to multiply the children of Israel, and he was going to set his sanctuary in the midst of them forever. Now, the Christian actually thinks that he's going to die and go to heaven and going to be in the sky because JC actually went up in the sky to set a place for him someplace. Fable. Most High states clearly that he will dwell in the midst of his people in the earth, in Jerusalem, in the city that he chose to lay his name. And his tabernacle will be established in the midst of them forevermore, because that's where he's going to be forevermore. That is not very difficult to understand. Now, let's read verse 27. My tabernacle also shall be with them. That's his temple. Yea, I will be their strength, and they shall be my people. Verse 28. And the heathen shall know that I, Yah, do sanctify Israel, the people, when my sanctuary shall be in the midst of them forevermore. So we're going to know exactly who the children of Israel are. All the nations of the earth will know. Why? Because the Most High will have his tabernacle established in the midst of his people in Jerusalem. And all the nations of the earth, those who are allowed to live, will have to send up representative once a year to pay homage to the Most High. And when they come, they're not coming empty. They're going to be bringing gold, diamonds, and everything else to give praises unto the Most High. There is no such thing as nations from 1948 to current today, 2020. You can't find nowhere where every year all the nations that's still allowed to live on this earth had to, not had a choice, had to go up to Jerusalem once every year from 1948 to 2020 and pay homage to the Most High because he has a temple there. It hasn't happened. So these people that are sitting in this land, they are not the people of the Most High. What they have done, they have tried to go into this prophecy, go into this book, and try to mimic and masquerade this prophecy, these prophecies, and they have failed miserably. So we see clearly here where the children of Israel are going to be made one stick. The Most High is going to forgive our sins. He's going to establish his temple in the midst of us forevermore. He will multiply us, and the heathen will acknowledge his people, acknowledge his tabernacle. His people in that land will adhere to his law. All the peoples of the earth will have to go up to that tabernacle. They're going to have to learn that law, and that law will be established throughout the earth. You have not read anywhere in Ezekiel chapter 37 where the children of Israel are going to return as one stick, and there will be a Knesset in there. You haven't read that, and you never will. Now, Isaiah chapter 60, the return home. Let's turn to Isaiah chapter 60. Isaiah chapter 60. Let's read the return home, the children of Israel. What happens when we get back into this land? When we return back onto Zion, what happens? So the Israelis is saying that they are the children of Israel, and they were gathered out of these nations and taken back, flown back by these European nations. They have been funded, and they have been getting money and weaponry by which to stay in the land. All right, let's read what the prophecy states as it pertains to Israel. Isaiah chapter 60 verse 1. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of Yah is risen upon thee. That's his law. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But Yah shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. The Most High's glory shall be seen upon us. We are the glory of the Most High. His glory is that law. So our job is to bring forth that light to the Gentiles. And what they're going to see is that the men of Israel will stand up and do what they're supposed to do, which is teach this law to all the peoples of the earth, starting with the house of Israel first. Verse 3. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. As we turn to these laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, we will come from that lower stature, watching all the nations rise above us, beat us down, and mistreat us. Once we turn back onto this law, then what happens is we bring forth that light. We are now given wisdom and understanding. And thus, by returning unto the Most High's law, we now return back to the head of all nations. And therefore, they will seek us out. They will come to our light because we will be the light bearers holding that law. As you have just read in the previous verse, verse 2, it states, "For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth." What is darkness? Wickedness. Darkness is absent of light, absent of wisdom, absence of the law, and gross darkness the people. So the people of the earth will be in gross darkness, meaning they will be misguided, they will be misled, they will be in wickedness, they will be in idolatry, they will be doing everything that is contrary to the Most High's law. So therefore, that is why it's saying in verse 3 that the Gentiles shall come to thy light. That light is that law. Verse 4, lift up thine eyes round about and see. All they gather themselves together. They come to thee. Thy sons shall come from afar, and thy daughters shall be nursed at thy side. So, all these nations that have beaten us down, what's going to happen is our children, we have nursed these children of our enemies, raised them, cooked for them, cleaned for them, wiped their nose, and everything else. And what's going to happen is there's going to be a role reversal. All of our enemies that hated us, that will kill our kids and do all manner of foul things, they're going to grab our babies and wipe the snot out of their noses and change their diapers and do it all willingly. So there will be a role reversal between us and our enemies. And the only way that role reversal takes place is when we adhere to law. Verse 5, then thou shalt see and flow together, and thine heart shall fear and be enlarged, because the abundance of the sea shall be converted unto thee. The forces of the Gentiles shall come unto thee. The forces of the Gentiles, all of their wealth. Verse 6, the multitude of camels shall cover thee, the dromedaries of Midian and Ephah. All they from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and incense, and they shall show forth the praise of Yah. So all of these many different peoples, what they're going to be doing, they're going to be coming forth onto Jerusalem, bringing gifts and bringing the children of Israel with them from all these many different nations. Verse 7, all the flocks of Kedar shall be gathered together unto thee. The rams of Nebaioth shall minister unto thee. That's be servants unto. They shall come up with acceptance on mine altar, and I will glorify the house of my glory. Most High only has two altars. One, the altar for burnt incense, and two, the altar for burnt sacrifices. He doesn't have one in America. He doesn't have one in Britain. He doesn't have one in Australia, China, or anywhere else. They're going to have to go up to that one house that's built in Zion and no other place. So he's saying that these heathen, they're going to be accepted when they bring their gifts up to his altar. Verse 8, who are these that fly as a cloud, and as the doves to their windows? Verse 9, surely the isles shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first, to bring thy sons from afar, their silver and their gold with them, unto the name of Yah thy glory, or to the name of Yah thy strength, and to the Holy One, not two or three, the Holy One of Israel, because he has glorified thee. That is the children of Israel. So all the many nations are going to gather our sons, gather our daughters, bring us back to the Most High's temple, and beg for forgiveness and beg for their lives. So they're going to bring the gold and silver with them, which means all we have been robbed and we have been spoiled in the midst of these nations. When we go back to Zion, US dollars will not be the currency. The currency has always been gold and silver in the earth. And so all the vaults that they have in Britain, all the vaults that they have in America, our reparations is going to be, you're going to open those vaults, take all that gold, silver, rubies, and diamonds that you have stolen from the peoples of the earth, that you have stolen from the children of Israel. You're going to get all of that. You're going to get the man of Israel. You're going to get his children, his wife, and everything that belongs to him. And you're going to take him back up to the Most High and return him from where you got him. That's what that pretty much boils down to. Verse 10, and the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls. We built the nations. We built England. We built France. And we built America and all these other nations in which we dwell. We were the forced labor. We were taken there for rigor. It was punishment. We built up everything. And these Europeans have the nerve to call us lazy when they actually got on boats and went someplace else across seas to get some other people to do the work. And then they have the nerve to call us lazy. So we built up their walls, and they will build up our walls in that holy land. Once again, verse 10, and the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. They will be servants unto us. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. So there will be mercy extended to the children of Israel, and the Most High never instructed us to be baptized for any of this to take place. Just so you're mindful of that. Verse 11, therefore thy gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day nor night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, their stuff, their goods, and that their kings may be brought. So all these kings, aka presidents of these many nations, they're going to be coming up to Jerusalem, coming up to the temple, offering gifts and all of these things to the Most High. Verse 12, for the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish, yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted. Now, if these Israelis are the people of the Most High, and they have been in the land since 1948, who anywhere, is there any nation that had to go up every once a year to them? It's never happened. Is there a nation that's perishing right now because they refuse to serve Israel? None of them. None of them. So we're reading the words of Isaiah straight from the Most High. And what you are to do is to look and see if any of this lines up with what they're saying. And that way you can clearly see if they are or if they are not the people of the Most High. So the Most High is saying that the nation that will not serve the children of Israel, he's going to kill them. Those nations are going to be destroyed. So you've got a bunch of nations not serving Israel. And Israel, the nation of Israel, are out here, like I said, they're begging for money and begging for weaponry, etc., and begging for protection. You can find anywhere where the house of Israel returns back onto the land, and they're taking planes to fly over to America and beg for money and beg for assistance and beg to make an allegiance with people to protect them. It's not in here. Verse 13, the glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, the fir tree, the pine tree, and the box together, to beautify the place of my sanctuary, and I will make the place of my feet glorious. That's his temple. Verse 14, the sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee. All right, let's look at that. These Israelis, if you let the Israelis tell it, their affliction has been the Germans. Germans are nothing but Europeans, just like them Israelis. Same people. They are all Europeans. Now, has Germans gone up and gone bending onto Israelis? You haven't seen that, and you will never see that. So the sons of them that afflicted thee. I don't know of any quote-unquote Israelite, include any black person that's afflicted an Israeli. We don't have the might to afflict them. They have money. They have power. They have powerful lobby groups that have money to control governments and dictate policy. And no quote-unquote black man has ever had to hired an Israeli any place and have afflicted an Israeli any place. So the sons of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee. If you look at the Israelis' records, he'll tell you that he was afflicted by the Germans, right? So the Germans afflicted him. I don't see any Germans going bending before Israelis. I don't see that. And all they that despise thee shall bow themselves down to the soles of thy feet. I don't see Nazi Germans bowing down to the soles of the feet of Israelis. And I don't see anyone of any other nation bowing down at the soles of the feet of Israelis. And they shall call thee the city of Yah, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel. So, what's going to happen when the children of Israel are established, the true children of Israel, once we are gathered out of these lands, and these people and these nations grab a hold of a man of Israel and say, I am with you, for the Most High is with you, and they want to learn the law, statute, judgment, and precepts of the Most High, they will be learning this from us, the people that they have spat on, the people that they have afflicted. They will come bending before us, because all the nations of the earth have afflicted the true house of Israel. That is our people that's throughout the diaspora. The only people that the Israeli could point to that afflicted them are Germans. And the Israelis, or the Jews that was in Germany, they weren't forced into Germany. They're born and raised there, have always been there. Verse 15, whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, so that no man went through thee, I will make thee an eternal excellence, a joy of many generations. All the nations hate the children of Israel throughout the diaspora. That's why they enslaved us, they've raped us, and they've made laws against us. Verse 16, thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles, and shalt suck the breast of kings, and thou shalt know that I, Yah, am thy Savior and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. So the Savior and the Redeemer of Jacob is not JC, it's the Most High Yah. We should already know that. Verse 17, for brass I will bring gold, and for iron I will bring silver, and for wood brass, and for stones iron. I will also make thy officers peace, and thine extractors righteous. Verse 18, violence shall no more be heard in thy land, wasting nor destruction within thy borders, but thou shalt call thy walls salvation, and thy gates praise. Now, once we return back onto this land, the Most High is saying there will be no violence in the land. Now, I want you to go to one of these Israeli channels and you tell me exactly if there's violence in that land. They're killing Palestinians every day in that land. They're locking up Palestinians every day in that land. Strangers who seek towards the land of Israel, especially the ones that look like me, they're locked up in open cages. They're imprisoned. They're sterilized. They're paid money to go back to the lands from which they're from. These are all facts. The Most High said we are to actually take care of the stranger. We're to love the stranger. But the Israelis don't love strangers. So anyone that comes to Israel, that comes to that land, they shun the stranger, can't stand them. They lock them up, run experiments on them, cut him out from getting any benefits, and pay the stranger to go back to where he came from. Now, where is that in any prophecy anywhere in this book of remembrance? It does not exist. Violence in the land. Most High stated when we got back onto this land, there will be no weapons of war. If in Dimona, somewhere in the desert, they have many weapons silos. Israel is one of the biggest exporters of weaponry. The Israelis are. They have all manner of weaponry in the land. They have a standing army that's supported by America and the other European nations. So they have violence in the land, and they do violence outside of that land, i.e. blowing up other people's stuff, killing people, running what I would call assassination. They went and got some, for anyone that's all the Germans that they felt harmed them. Israel had assault teams go snatch them up in the middle of the night in the many places they were hiding, brought them to justice, they killed them. So the Israelis have a means and way by which to strike back at all of their enemies. This is not prophecy. The children of Israel would not have any might in their hand by which to retaliate against their enemies. So all of this goes contrary to what the prophecy states. We know there's violence in the land. The Most High said there will be no violence. So there's a direct contradiction right there. Verse 19, the sun shall be no more thy light by day. We still got that there. Neither for brightness shall the moon give light unto thee, but Yah shall be unto thee an everlasting light, and Yah thy glory. Verse 20, the sun shall no more go down, neither shall the moon withdraw itself. For Yah shall be unto thee everlasting light. For Yah shall be thine everlasting light, and the days of thy mournings shall be ended. So once we return back onto this land, we're not going to have the mourning in the land. We're not going to have the droughts in the land. There will be no violence in the land. There will be no weapons of war in the land. There will be no whorehouses in the land, no strip clubs in the land, no homosexual parades in the land. There will be absolutely no homosexuals in the land. There will be no houses unto idols in which you can go up to worship in the land, because the first order of business when we get to the land is to remove all of these things. All right. All the mourning and the killing of our sons and daughters that we have to face in America, that the Palestinians are facing every day when they shoot their children, all of these things, these mournings will end. It will be no more. Verse 21, the people also shall be all righteous. Now, a righteous man doesn't go to a strip club. A righteous man doesn't take bribes. All the people shall be righteous once we return back onto this land. So how come there are strip clubs in the land right now if those Israelis are the people that was gathered and returned like they claim? How come there's weaponry in the land? How come there's violence in the land? How come there's unrighteousness in the land? The Most High is stating here all the people will be righteous. And we know clearly that that is not the case right now in that land. So we know clearly that these are not the people of the Most High. So once again, verse 21, thy people also shall be all, not some, all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever, the branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. How is he going to be glorified? By way of this law. Verse 22, a little one shall become 1,000, and a small one a strong nation. I, Yah, will hasten it in his time. In the time of the house of Israel, in the time of the children of Israel. When we are awakened, Ezekiel chapter 37, our understanding is given back unto us, our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, our true heritage, exactly who we are, why all of this took place, and exactly what the end result of it shall be. All of these things are going to be returned back onto us once we start remembering via this book of remembrance. Okay, so as all of these things happen, then we will take a hold of our inheritance and we will teach the people of the earth exactly who we are. But prior to this, prior to us returning onto the Most High, we had no clue who we were, because the prophecy states that our heritage would be removed. It would be discontinued, meaning we wouldn't know it and the other nations wouldn't know it either. So we would be the vagabonds of the earth, moving from place to place, having no identity, having no language, having no culture, having no understanding. We would be dummies in the midst of the nations. And that's where we have been for thousands of years. So now, as the Most High begins to pour out his Spirit upon us, we're beginning to shake ourselves from the dust. We have been moving around as dead men. No light, no wisdom, eyes we cannot see, ears we cannot hear, fatness upon our hearts where we would not be able to understand. But then we turn to these laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts. And once we do that, then we have a total reversal of roles. The curses become lifted, and now the curses will be placed upon our enemies. Hope that makes sense to everyone. All right, now, we were given amnesia. Verse 32. Let's go to, Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 26. Deuteronomy chapter 32. Deuteronomy chapter 32, and we will read verse 26. And verse 26 of Deuteronomy chapter 32 reads, I said, I will scatter them into corners. I will make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. So no one actually would know who the children of Israel are, including the children of Israel. But if you let the Jews tell it, the Jews have always known who they were. They always had put forth that they're the people of God, etc., etc. This is not the prophecy. Let's turn to Ezekiel chapter 12, and we'll read verse 1 and 2. Ezekiel chapter 12, and we'll read verse 1 and 2. We were made deaf, and we were made blind. If you saw someone that was deaf and blind, they are commonly referred to as a dumb person. Verse 12, chapter 12 of Ezekiel, Ezekiel chapter 12, and we'll read verse 1. Verse 1 reads, The word of Yah also came unto me, saying, Son of man, thou dwellest in the midst of a rebellious house, which have eyes to see, and see not. They have ears to hear, and hear not, for they are a rebellious house. So once we decide to rebel against the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, we went into darkness. We became blind. We have eyes, we can see, but we see not. We have ears to hear, but we hear not. Fatness is placed upon our heart that we would not be able to understand, because all of this was a curse for rebellion. So we were rebellious, and so we were made stupid. And I hope you understand that. Now, let's turn to Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6. To reiterate, like I said, the Israelis, if you let them tell it, they're the smartest people on the earth. But the Most High did not say that about his people. He said we're foolish people. And he removed our knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Isaiah chapter 6, and we'll read verse 9 through 12. And verse 9 reads, oh, 1 second. Isaiah chapter 6. Isaiah chapter 6 and verse 9 reads, And he said, Go and tell this people, Hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. So if you ever try to speak to an Israelite about the Most High's laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, he doesn't understand you. He doesn't hear you. He cannot see things the way you're seeing things. He has an idol in his heart. So the Most High has made him blind because he is rebellious to law, to the Creator's law. And there's nothing you can do to convince him. So when you're dealing with these laws, statutes, judgments, and precepts, and you're teaching people, do not try to convince them of anything. You present the information, you plant the seed, and you keep moving. That's why this YouTube platform is very good, because everyone comes here on their own accord. You can look at this as often as you like. You can rewind it. You can cross-reference it. And you're not sitting here arguing with me, and I'm not arguing with you. I present this information. You sit at your home, you read it, you study it, and then you have a decision to make. It's not a matter of anyone trying to convince anyone or force their ideas or ideals on anyone. It's simply presenting the laws of the Most High before your face, and you are to read it, you are to discern it, and then you are to make a decision on which way you will walk. And that's it. And that can only be done by the reader. All right. So once again, verse 9 of Isaiah chapter 6. And he said, Go and tell this people, Hear ye indeed, but understand not, see ye indeed, but perceive not. Verse 10. Make the heart of this people fat, and make their eyes heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and convert, and be healed. Verse 11. Then said I, Yah, how long? And he answered, Until the cities be wasted without inhabitants, and the houses without man, and the land be utterly desolate. Verse 12. And Yah have removed men far away, and there be a great forsaking in the midst of the land. Now, the great forsaken in the midst of the land would be that there would be no law in the land. Men would be doing that which is right in their own eyes. In other words, they will be in gross darkness walking contrary to the Most High's law. So if you're in darkness, you have no light. And keep in mind, light is the law, and by way of the law is which we received wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So stepping away from that law is literally stepping into darkness. All right, let's turn to Jeremiah chapter 17. Jeremiah chapter 17. Jeremiah chapter 17, and we'll read verse 4. And verse 4 of Jeremiah chapter 17 reads, And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. So, the children of Israel highly upset the Most High. So the Most High, what he did, he discontinued our heritage. We didn't know who we were. That's the prophecy. And that's why you have that Ezekiel 37 chapter, is the waking up of the children of Israel from out of the dust. Because we have been as dead men walking around without this law, deaf and blind in the midst of the nations. So we begin to wake up when we turn to this light, when we turn to this law. I hope that is understood to those of you who are hearing this. Okay, so this is to reiterate that our heritage was removed and we would not know who we were or who we are. However, if you let the Israeli tell it, he's a Jew, he's always been a Jew, and he knows exactly who he is. That's not been the prophecy for the children of Israel. In fact, throughout the diaspora, the children of Israel have had their names changed every 10 years. We're called many different things. We cannot settle or agree on exactly who we are, what we are, and where we're from. We're the only people on this earth running around with other people's names on us, and we have no idea where we're from. Well, at least we didn't. We do now. Let's turn to Isaiah chapter 33. Isaiah chapter 33, and we will read verse 13. All right, Isaiah chapter 33, verse 13, and it reads, The sinners in Zion are afraid. That's the people that's sitting in Zion right now. Fearfulness has surprised the hypocrites. They are saying that they are Jews, they are the people of God. Yet, they're killing Palestinians, that's one. Yet, when any stranger come onto the land to seek sanctuary, they lock them up. They pay them money to go back to where they're from. They put them in places where they cannot prosper. They literally mistreat them and hate the stranger. So they're hypocrites. They're saying that the people of God, they do not have a temple, ain't never built one. They're saying that the people of God, you can't find nowhere where no Israeli man is speaking to the nations, no Jew speaking to the nations, telling them that they are to return back unto law, statutes, judgments, and precepts. You can't find that. So these are hypocrites. Who among us shall dwell with the devouring fire? The devouring fire is the Most High. Who among us shall dwell with the everlasting burnings? That's the Most High. This is who is going to be able to be in that land. Verse 15. He that walketh righteously, that means the man that's walking in the law, and speaketh uprightly, a man that's not taking no bribes, a man that's not in whorehouses, a man that's not in strip clubs, a man that's not at gay parades or tolerant of it. He that despises the gain of oppression. The Israelis are oppressing Palestinians, and they are oppressing any stranger that comes into the land that is not a white person. That shaketh his hands from holding of bribes. Meaning, a man, the only people that's going to be allowed in this land is a man that walks righteously, that speaks righteously, that despises any kind of thievery, that refuses to take bribes, and don't want to hear nothing about no bloodshed. He's not going to be a party to murder. And he's not going to turn his eyes away from evil and act like he didn't see it or hear it. So the only person that's going to be allowed to dwell in this land is going to be the righteous, the upright, once we return to this land. And if you look in the land of Israel, you can see none of them upright. And the Most High said clearly that all the people will be righteous. We read that earlier. So what you're to do now is to go find some of these Israeli channels and read up on what's going on in the land. And you tell me if they're all righteous, and that will establish to you whether those are the people of Israel or not. Because they did that whole charade where they got all these people from these many different European nations and flew them into the land and said, God's people are home. So you have to validate whether that's the case or not by coming into these scrolls. Okay, so we see clearly here that verse 16, he shall dwell on high, that's the righteous man. His place of defense shall be the munitions of rocks. Bread shall be given him, his waters shall be sure. So those who are walking in righteousness, they will have peace and they will have all that they need in abundance. The Israelis, on the other hand, they don't have any water in the land. They have to create desalination plants in order to have clean water to drink. They have to go down in the Jordan Valley and other places to try to annex land that's fertile. The Most High said we will have the latter rain and the former rain. In other words, the land will not be barren. He's going to bring forth the multitude of the fruits and the trees and the harvest, and everything is going to be in abundance. These Israelis are struggling to get some clean water to drink. And they're trying their best to try to bring alive the lands that Ezekiel cursed to be barren. And it will be barren until the children of Israel returns back onto that land. And there's nothing the Israeli can do to change that. I don't care how many scientists they've got. All right. Now, let's turn to Zechariah chapter 2. Zechariah chapter 2. Zechariah chapter 2.